Welcome to Sarah's Kitchen and Kendra's S&K Kitchen. We'll have to make up something for that later. But, welcome. It's extremely small, but extremely delicious. Not the kitchen, just the food we're making out of it. So, I think that's the purpose of what we're doing. Making good food that's good for you. So, we're going to make some Brazilian cheese bread today, and it's going to be delicious. It's gluten-free. It's not dairy-free yet, but it's, we're using goat, so it should be a little bit better than completely cow. And let's get started. I'm going to make this today inside the measuring cup because it's easier to pour out and it's really nice and convenient to mix in and of course to measure in as well. We're using sunflower oil, egg. Always have your recipe handy. Okay, I'm going to start out with the things that need to be measured. So we need 2/3 cup milk. And we are going to use a coconut beverage. Can you see that okay? Yeah. Okay. A coconut beverage because we try not to use too much moo cow. So we're going to measure out 2/3 cup milk. A third of olive oil, but this time we're going to use sunflower oil because it works really well for this recipe. And so from the 2/3, adding 1/3 would make a full cup of liquid. Since we have 2 eggs, and I thought we only had 1, I'm going to go ahead and double the recipe because this is so delicious. 1 won't last for too long. Okay. Everything's mixed. This recipe does call for a warm egg, so you can either let the eggs sit out for a while and warm up to room temperature, or if you haven't done that and you're hungry, you can go ahead and run warm water or place it in warm water and let it warm up. When you hold the egg for a minute, the inside shouldn't cool your hand down. It should be nice and warm. Not hot, just warm. So we do have the cheese, which is a goat cheese, and the recipe calls for a 1/2 cup, but we're using an entire cup of goat cheese. There's the egg on the counter. I like to use a whisk when mixing this together because it works a little bit easier. Oh, my reminder to set the timer, set the oven to 450. Don't forget, I know sometimes we get hungry and we get in a hurry, but it is good while you're getting your mixes together and baking to preset your oven so it's nice and warm when the bread goes in. So this bread, when I printed out the recipe, the bread goes into small, like a mini muffin tin. It can go into that. I've also found that it can go into, I do have a glass pie pan, and the mix goes into a glass pie pan and sets at the bottom. Alright, we do need to add our water to get our 1 egg in. So I'm going to go ahead and get water. I need 2 tablespoons water in addition, just for the egg white mixture. We added our 2 tablespoons of water. We're going to need, okay, we have our 2 eggs, our oil, our milk, the cheese, and now we add tapioca flour. So it calls for 1.5 cups of tapioca flour, which is going to be 3 cups for a double recipe. That worked out perfect. Oh, but we also, wait, I do need that because I have to put it in the...
Yeah, you do it.
Okay. So for these egg whites, it says for a recipe, we can also add them to, we can add it to the dry ingredients. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Tapioca flour is extremely fine, and so once it's open, it's going to be everywhere. So I do have a 1/2 cup measure with oil in it from the earlier explosion. My 1 cup measure is being taken up by coconut oil at the moment, so we're just going to do a bunch of 1/2 cup measures. And this is tapioca starch, and it's 100%. We get it from the market. I'll have to check if I should have. Okay. We get it from the Korean market.
You're opening it upside down.
This is where the tape is.
There's tape in both.
That's solid on that side.
Oh, okay.
That
I was thinking of the plastic.
Yeah, possibly. I'm thinking, what's the best way to measure this? And so we're adding 4 1/2 teaspoons, because we need 2 teaspoons of egg white to work in the recipe. Okay. I'm not sure why this is exploding. Maybe it's because of the goat cheese.
Yeah.
I think I should put it into another bowl because it does need to be mixed vigorously. Here I have some dried basil that came out of my garden, and I don't know, I know when we do fresh spices they need a little bit more time to sit, but I know how to cook with dried spices, so I allow them to dry or dehydrated the spices, and they're much tastier than getting them from the store. So basil, from what I've discovered, when it's fresh or fresh dried, then it's just delicious. And even if you get a whole piece of some basil, it doesn't taste like basil, like assaulting your face. So here, this is sage, and this is also from my garden, and the sage is a little bit stronger, so I want to make sure it's a little bit more well blended. Here's fresh rosemary, and this is dried from the garden, so I'm going to take a little bit of it off, just straight down. I'm going to go straight down the stalk, and I'm going to look what I have in my hand so I make sure I don't have any big sticks or parts in it. It's all dried, so it's going to come apart really easily off the plant. I don't want any big sticks in it again. And when you get it from the store, it can be in sticks or small parts. And that's the rosemary that I grow in my garden. Very pretty, very aromatic. And so I'm going to mash it up because rosemary is something that as you're eating, you don't want a whole piece of it in your teeth or, you know, to get a hold of, because it's an amazing spice. It is very strong. So if you get a whole piece of rosemary, it can be almost offensive. So we're going to try to just grind that down. I'm just using my fingers and twisting it in my hand and making smaller pieces of it.
I can't see that.
Okay, smaller pieces of it, so the rosemary is going in. So we can start with our foundation. We don't have to have as strong of top because our foundation is going to have a nice pizza flavor to it. Let's see if we can get a little bit back in here. It's easier to pour than being in the glass bowl. It's more precise. We did, when we first started this recipe, we enjoy it very much, so we've worked on different ways of doing it. We put it on a pizza tray, which was a metal pan, and it would stick to it even whether we put down any parchment, or, well, parchment worked great. We put down foil and it pulled it. We put it right to the pan, and it stuck incredibly horribly. So I found
spraying it still
yeah,
stuck.
spray with any kind of non-stick, and it just wasn't working. So I have these glass pie pans, and it works incredibly beautifully. So besides the glass pie pans, the thing we found that worked the best was to have the pizza pie tray with parchment on it. However, the parchment, you must clip the ends or tuck the ends because they can burn. Because it's not meant for cooking as much like direct heat for the parchment, but it does work very well. If there's another method that works that you've tried after you've tried this recipe, just go ahead and comment below. And take it slow when you're pouring it in. When you use different cheeses and different milks, it will have different textures. And right now, this mixture is going to taste kind of awful. It's going to be bitter, and it's just not going to have a great flavor. But trust me, it will when it's done baking. So here it is. So the oven's preheated. Okay, I got the first one in. This one's a little bit bigger. And I like to make it thin because the Brazilian bread still doesn't have the stickiness, the tackiness of wheat products or having a binding agent to hold it high. So when you make the small ones, the puff is going to be, the puff is just in a small container. It's going to bake evenly, and I don't make this too thick, so it bakes evenly. It can be a little gooey in the middle, but it's not as extreme as some of the other gluten-free baking that I've done before with like whole pancake, things like that. So again, this is also great as just eating as a slice, dipping it into chili. Or other things. And it does rise quite a bit, probably twice its size, so this isn't going to be very thin. In the end, it's going to end up being a nice thick crust. Okay, this is in at 450. And for 15 minutes, so we'll check back with you in a little bit. So we want to be safe when we're using the oven. Just turn off the timer so it doesn't annoy our neighbors. Use a hot pad because the glass has been in the 450-degree oven for several minutes. Alright. This is our first one. It is golden in the bottom and nice and hard on the top. That looks like it's going to be wonderful. And here's the one with onions on it. It is a little bit warmer, so I'm not going to turn it towards the camera. But I'm going to give these a few minutes to cool down, just until the pan cools down. We can take them out safely, and we can put our next batch in. And so this recipe makes 4 pies with about that thickness of crust. And if you need to, once this cools, you can poke it down a little bit so all your toppings don't slide off. So when you're making a pizza, you're going to put the sauce over it after it's fully cooked. Put your toppings on top so it bubbles the cheese, warms the toppings. You don't even have to have cheese. It's so delicious. So just a few minutes once this cools down, and we'll try it out for you. Apparently one of these disappeared. I think my kitchen has little elves that come and eat food when I'm not looking. But it was very delicious. So this is what one of them looks like. It has cooled down. So you have kind of a crust finish from the glass. Makes a very nice finish. And here's the top. So I didn't push it down. I just set it on the plate to cool, to finish cooling. And it's actually made a very beautiful pie. So you can leave it in the glass when you're ready. Maybe take a couple out to eat, and then do up pizzas on your last 2, or do up pizzas as you go. Any way you do it's fine. So we did eat the one with the dried onions on it, and it was very delicious. We put a little bit of nut cheese on it, and that made it a nice warm bread. It was a little bit more tacky than it looks like this one's going to turn out to be. And I also made an Alfredo roux, which is delicious. So we were dipping it in there, and then something came in and ate I just don't know what happened to it because it just came out of the oven. So you can see when it's not quite, it is done, it is cooked through, but because of the nature of gluten-free, it is a little bit gooey still, but it's still extremely delicious. So the bread's cooled down, but the Alfredo sauce is hot. And I like to cook a lot of things together when I'm cooking, because it just makes sense to be in the kitchen and get a lot of things done, especially things that go together. I did get a pork roast ready because we're going to put that in the oven. I have hot water over here for Jell-O. We have the pizzas. We're going to make several of them at a time. So we're not just cooking for one meal or one item. We're going to go ahead and heat up the kitchen, and we're going to do what we got to do. And then when we shut it down, we're going to have plenty of food to eat. So this is a bread, and it's got some Alfredo sauce on it, and it was just divine. Okay, another trick that I've learned, if you're not happy with that gooiness, you can always take this and flip it over. See, it'll go down naturally on its own. So the bottoms have a little time to crisp up. The smaller one seems to be doing okay, as far as not having too much gooiness in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and set that flying saucer aside for the moment. When we're done with that pan, let it cool down before you put it near water or put it in the sink, because the water may have it shatter. So be very careful when you're cooking and have the hot pans around. We can take some Alfredo sauce, making an Alfredo pizza because it's delicious. And you can just press that bubble down. Now there's another bubble over here. You can press it down. This one's very crunchy. So I'm going to take some Alfredo sauce. I'm afraid I don't have too many vegetables, so we could just cool it with the Alfredo sauce on it, and it'll be a delicious Alfredo sauce pizza. We don't have too many toppings, do we? For pizza. The mushrooms went bad, so we tossed them. So if you put a heavy sauce on it, just be careful that it may soak up the sauce. It may water down the crust. But play with it, have fun, enjoy cooking, and we're so glad you're on the tasty side. Hope you enjoy.